And tonight on the Daily Wrap, Planned Parenthood under fire once again, this time for wasting taxpayer dollars. Did President Obama make Russian President Vladimir Putin the most powerful leader in the world, or at least the most interesting man in the world? And the New York Post thinks so. And is Vice President Joe Biden the Democrats' best chance to keep the White House? Yep. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to a very special purple edition of the Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, along with Rick Unger. We always coordinate, and finally, we did not one day look what happens.
Purple, man. We're not going to be blue or red tonight. We're just going to be in the middle. Purple.
Okay, that's what it is, right? Purple means you're neutral between red and blue in the whole political sphere. Okay, well, lots to talk about, including Planned Parenthood today. Did you catch the hearings today at all?
I heard a little bit at the beginning. Then I had to run out and actually go to work for a living. So, no, I didn't hear much after that.
Okay, well, we'll be discussing it at length.
No doubt.
You've seen the tapes and so on, so not the tapes, but you know what I mean. Anyway, to Mr. Unger's right, the working man. She is a CNBC contributor and a New York Times bestseller and apparently a fantasy football guru. Carol Roth is here once again. Okay, let's get right to the Daily Download. As we said, Planned Parenthood under fire again, this time from GOP lawmakers today, not only for the videos that targeted the group, but also for wasting taxpayer dollars. Planned Parenthood President Cecile Richards defended her organization regarding those videos.
The outrageous accusations leveled against Planned Parenthood based on heavily doctored videos are offensive and categorically untrue. I realize, though, that the facts have never gotten in the way of these campaigns to block women from health care they need and deserve. It is unacceptable that in the 21st century, women in America are routinely harassed for accessing a legal medical procedure. Doctors who provide abortion, as well as their families, often face harassment and threats of violence. And after this recent smear campaign, it's only gotten worse.
Meanwhile, Congressman Jason Chaffetz, chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform, brought up wasteful spending by Planned Parenthood, specifically targeting Ms. Richards' salary.
What I don't want to tolerate, what I don't want to become numb to, is wasting those taxpayer dollars. And as best I can tell, we're going to have a hearing here, this is an organization that doesn't need federal subsidy. Planned Parenthood is an organization with massive salaries.
Congressman Chaffetz also brought up some non-essential spending by the pro-choice organization.
This is also an organization that seems to have exorbitant travel expenses. 2013, they spent more than $5 million in travel. First-class tickets, private chartered aircraft. Roughly, they're spending $14,000 a day on travel. That's a lot. That's money that isn't going to women's health care.
Okay. Obviously, the undercover videos produced the pro-life group, Center for Medical Progress, came under fire, but Congressman Jim Jordan had a simple question for Cecile Richards.
If the videos were selectively edited, heavily edited, if this was entrapment, if this was all untrue, then why'd you apologize?
In my opinion, it was inappropriate to have a clinical discussion of in a non-confidential, non-clinical setting.
The first video comes out July 14th. 2 days later, you go and issue an apology, and you said this: "It's unacceptable. I personally apologize for the tone and statements."
The question is funding, it seems. So the GOP is doing their best to pull funding from Planned Parenthood. Their case, the group doesn't need the funding. Carol Roth, do you agree?
Well, I think if you look at the majority of the funding, we're talking about Medicare reimbursements here. So are you going to go after every hospital and look at hospitals and go, well, you're rolling in it. You've got doctors who are making 5, 6, 7 figures. You don't need the funding either. I mean, it's access to health care. If you want to have a conversation about Medicaid and whether we should be funding Medicaid, that's one discussion. But to say that Medicaid reimbursement, somehow we don't need the funding, I just don't understand that argument.
Rick, this seemed to go in a different direction. I thought the videos would be more the focus, and instead it was, you're making too much money, you're wasting too much money. It seems the GOP took their eye off the ball on this one.
This is exactly why. Look, you've heard me say it time after time. I want a federal investigation of these tapes. I do. I want to know if any laws were broken. I absolutely want the investigation. You've also heard me say I couldn't care less about Congress's investigation, and Jason Chaffetz showed you exactly why I feel that way. You know, you go off in these witch hunts to score political points. Nobody learns anything. Tell you what, Congressman Chaffetz, why don't we start talking about how much money you spend in your job, in the body where you work, and then we'll get around to the rather meager amount of money you're talking about with Planned Parenthood. It's a stupid process he puts us through. It's all designed to get rid of a chief contributor to the Democratic Party. And again, let us have a real investigation, an independent one by the Justice Department. Pick a special prosecutor, don't care how you do it, but enough with this congressional nonsense. And Chaffetz is the king of them all.
And how do you, with a straight face, looking at the IRS and the waste of all the different government agencies, have the nerve to come out and say, I'm sorry, you're making too much money as the CEO of an organization?
How do you think Cecile Richards did today in terms of her performance? I mean, she certainly was under fire, particularly from the Republican side, obviously. And those videos are damning. They're almost impossible to defend. That's why I'm surprised that the GOP went in this direction. Now this is what we're talking about, and this is what these sort of hearings are for. Not so much for the hearings themselves, but for the news cycles they create.
I think it was a benefit to her, and I think that certainly there was a firestorm. There are a lot of issues I think to be talked about around Planned Parenthood, but she seemed to hold up very well under fire, and I think it really just served to make the congressman look like he was going off on some sideshow and lessen his credibility instead of hers.
There's a reason Cecile Richards gets paid $600,000 a year. She's very good at this, much better than Jason Chaffetz is at doing his job, which is why he gets paid considerably less. And if it were up to me, he wouldn't be getting paid at all.
To that point, it is a nonprofit organization, and I understand it's a big organization. $600,000 is a lot of money.
But it's a big organization, and I hate the whole idea of that because it's a nonprofit that you don't want to attract the best people and pay them a certain amount of money. All nonprofit means
the Red Cross?
All it is it's a tax status. It means the shareholders don't benefit. It doesn't mean anything else. I feel like people have usurped the name nonprofit to mean something that it doesn't.
Exactly. It's very well put, Carol. And you know what? I'm going to say what I always say. When you start counting other people's money, it's because you don't have a real argument to throw at them.
So what happens next?
What happens next is what I hope will happen next, which is I do want that investigation to see if there was any criminal wrongdoing. Now, we had our second state investigation come through yesterday in Missouri, and they found that there were absolutely no violations of the law in Missouri. Nothing was done wrong. The thing is that the real issues involved in this tape are potential federal violations. So it's going to take a federal investigation. It should be there. I have a funny feeling the more I'm learning about these tapes, and I did watch every single one of them, that Planned Parenthood would probably come out of this better than most people are expecting, which might answer your question, by the way, why the Congressional Committee didn't go there.
I just don't like that, and I'm sorry, Carol, let me just make one quick point. I just don't like the whole talking point around they were heavily edited. I've produced, I've been on the other side of this table in control rooms. I even made a movie one time. I can tell you that
what kind of movie?
Oh, it was a docu-comedy actually called Catch Mango, 12 Weekends at the Jersey Shore. It's tremendous. Anyway, we'll talk about it another time. Anyway, point being that when I watch them, it's all verbatim conversations. It's not like you see a sentence cut off midway.
But that doesn't mean, no.
But to say they're heavily doctored, Rick, is categorically dishonest.
Let's talk about what it's not. Let's talk about what they're talking about. I agree with you. Nobody's taking words and splicing them together. Right. But you can edit something. I've had a little experience with movies and television myself. And you can certainly put conversations in certain orders. It won't change whether they broke the law or not, but it will change your take on how you see them.
But
you see a question and you hear an answer.
Here's the bigger picture issue.
It's not like a different answer to a question.
The GOP should let this go because it is election season and it is not going to help.
So you're saying no government shutdown over Planned
Parenthood? I would say absolutely, categorically no.
Okay, so no, you wouldn't do it, and no, it won't happen.
It's not going to happen.
Okay, very good. We want to know what you think about Planned Parenthood's alleged wasteful spending. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let your voice be heard. May read some of those comments later in the show. Coming up next, did President Obama make Russian President Vladimir Putin the most powerful leader in the world? Stay tuned.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. New York opinion columnist Benny Avni wrote this today in the New York Post. Obama has turned Putin into the world's most powerful leader. After both men gave speeches at the UN General Assembly yesterday, many believe the American president was playing it a bit too soft when using language like this.
We must go forward in pursuit of our ideals, not abandon them at this critical time. We must give expression to our best hopes, not our deepest fears. This institution was founded because men and women who came before us had the foresight to know that our nations are more secure when we uphold basic laws and basic norms and pursue a path of cooperation over conflict. And strong nations, above all, have a responsibility to uphold this international order.
So does Mr. Avni have this right? Has Obama really turned Putin into the world's most powerful leader, Joe Concha?
Looks can be deceiving. We are still the most powerful nation on earth. We're the only superpower. However, Putin is the mover and shaker right now. Walks into Crimea, not even a shot fired. Takes over an entire country. Now he's in Syria. He's a player again. He's making Russia look relevant, Rick. But this is what happens when you create vacuums. 2003, we take out Saddam Hussein. There's a vacuum. Al-Qaeda in Iraq, it's unsettled for a while. We go to a surge, calm things down, then we pull our troops out because Obama wants a legacy to be the guy who took the troops home. Right. What happens? ISIS goes in. Vacuums are always filled. This is what's happening here in Syria, and it's being filled by, of all countries, Russia.
See, this is what happens when we both wear purple ties. I actually agree, Carol, with most of what Joe had to say. How can somebody become overnight the most powerful leader in the world when they run a country that's simply not the most powerful country in the world? They're almost broke. They've got nothing but problems. I think Avni's overstating it, don't you?
Well, I think the fact that he rides his horse bareback, you know, without a shirt on, I think that has made him the most powerful man. But that aside,
so does Rick.
It's very difficult when you have a country that is in a recession, that doesn't have economic growth, that has economic sanctions from a lot of other countries around the world, to be the superpower. Right. That being said, we'll put that aside for a second. I do think that Obama has contributed to what I like to call the wussification of America. And while we still remain a superpower, we're not felt that way in the world.
Well, while President Obama called for diplomacy to end conflict with groups like ISIS and terrorists worldwide, Russian President Vladimir Putin appeared to take a more direct approach to dealing with terrorists.
On the basis of international law, we must join efforts to address the problems that all of us are facing and create a genuinely broad international coalition against terrorism. Similar to the anti-Hitler coalition, it could unite a broad range of forces that are resolutely resisting those who, just like the Nazis, sow evil and hatred of humankind.
Now, with the news that Russia has entered into an intelligence pact with Syria and Iraq to defeat ISIS, many are saying that Putin has gained the upper hand when it comes to which leader in the world will carry the most influence in the Middle East. To discuss this, let's bring in our friend Jim Hansen from the Center for Security Policy. Mr. Hansen served in the U.S. Army Special Forces and conducted counterterrorism, counterinsurgency, and other operations in more than a dozen countries. Welcome, Jim. Good to have you back.
Always good to be here.
So listen, Jim, I know you watched both of those speeches at the UN. What did you think?
I mean, you got a world-class tough guy, and then you've got the world's most successful beta male. There is absolutely no comparison. Obama is a a sorry excuse for a leader, and I hesitate to even use the word leader.
How do you really feel, Jim?
Well, I thought you guys were doing a pretty good job of kicking him, but there's a few ribs not broken yet in that dead horse, so I'll jump on.
Jim, how much do you think the president not following through with the red line that he said he would draw in Syria after Assad used chemical weapons on his own people, and then, of course, we didn't do anything? You think Putin sits back, sees that, and says, I can do whatever I want. This president is not going to follow through on anything that resembles a threat of force. Yeah,
I mean, Obama's signature move is the kowtow, and he's willing to capitulate to anybody, and that was a perfect example of it.
What's a kowtow?
Bow down.
Oh, bow down. Okay. I think
yeah, kowtow is a fancy, highfalutin Asian term for it.
Gotcha.
Which he uses for the Chinese.
Jim, there's an inconsistency here. Do you think that we should be removing Assad from power right now in the middle of all this?
I think we should have removed Assad from power when he stepped over that red line.
And then who would have filled that vacuum?
Who cares when you've got a genocidal dictator barrel bombing his people and using chemical weapons? The correct thing to do is to take him out and then deal with the consequences afterwards, rather than leave him in power, let 4 million people become refugees, and somewhere closing in on 1 million people in that region dead.
But most people think that ISIL would have stepped into that vacuum.
Who knows? First of all, anybody who says they know what would have happened, I don't believe. But
that's not a very good answer, Jim.
No. What is happening, what was happening, and what will continue to happen is that Assad will continue to slaughter everyone. And now he's got the Russians and the Iranians as allies, and we're going to be what? Their intelligence sources? Because we share intel with the Iraqis, who now share that with the Russians and Iranians. Well done, Barack. You put us all the way at the back of the bus.
Jim, just one quick question. If ISIL is, and we only have 10 seconds.
We only have 10 seconds.
If ISIS is defeated, though, in terms of means to an end, this is a good thing, right?
Yes.
Quickly, Jim. Okay. That was quick. Thank you. Jim Hansen from the Center for Security Policy, thanks for coming on. I know we'll have you back. As many of you know, Dr. Ben Carson has been sharply criticized for saying that a Muslim should never be president. He has now released an urgent newsletter to the public on Newsmax.com. It's exclusive to us, and it's important that you take the time to read it. You can find the letter at Newsmax website. Read Dr. Carson's urgent letter about why he's making a stand on this issue. And if you stay with us, we're coming right back.
And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Donald Trump has unveiled his new tax plan that he believes will make America great again.
We're going to cut the individual rates from 7 brackets to 4. Simplification. 25%, 20%, 10%, and 0. If you're single and earn less than $25,000, or married and jointly earn less than $50,000, you'll not pay any income tax. Nothing.
Let me repeat, you do not have... Who did the sound in that building? Who needs a microphone?
Trump doesn't need a microphone in any building.
Yeah, I guess not, but that was just almost like out of, a bad movie. But it sounded authoritative, so
it's almost like when you go to Walmart, it's like sale in aisle 3.
Right.
We've got a blue light.
Clean up in aisle 2.
I wasn't even in aisle 2. All right. The Donald went on to explain what his tax plan eliminates.
This eliminates very strongly and quickly the marriage penalty, very unfair penalty. It eliminates the AMT, which is the alternative minimum tax. It ends the death tax. It's a double taxation. A lot of families go through hell over the death tax. It reduces or eliminates most of the deductions and loopholes available to special interests and to the very rich. In other words, it's going to cost me a fortune.
So Trump went on to say it would preserve the mortgage deduction and charitable givings deductions. Here are the rest of the details for you taking notes at home. 4 tax brackets instead of 7. The first would be a 0% rate. Individuals making $25,000 to $50,000 or couples making $50,000 to $100,000 would pay 10% in federal income taxes and keep most of their current exemptions and deductions. Not bad. Those making $50,000 to $150K or couples making $100K to $300K would pay 20% and keep more than half of their current deductions. Numbers don't play well on television sometimes because that's floating all over the place.
Little in the
or
weeds.
anywhere else it seems to be. Congress, you know, throw the venue out.
Can we talk about his last sentence? I actually have not been overly critical of Trump on this. It's not all that much different than what Jeb Bush has offered, what Marco Rubio has offered. It's not crazy. It's not Trump crazy. It's a rational plan. I have some things I pick at. But when he says at the end, this will cost me a fortune, nonsense. If for no other reason that by eliminating the death tax, the estate tax, which, by the way, only affects people who have estates of more than $5 million, and mostly hurts farmers, by the way, if it's going to save him millions upon millions upon
But do you think he
millions.
cares about
dead.
his
It won't save him anything.
We leave it to
He'll
our
be
kids
dead.
anyhow. So that part he overdid it.
He doesn't care about that, though, right? He really doesn't. In other words, I don't think. No. He does not.
This isn't to benefit him, though. I mean, I feel like this plan is.
That's not it does benefit you when it
But he's not
benefits
putting the
your
plan in
kids.
to benefit himself
Exactly.
or his rich buddies. You always hear that from Democrats, like this is just to help out your rich buddies and Halliburton. And
But of course, the devil's in the details. This only works out well if he does, in fact, I mean, he changed the rates, not bad, okay, but it only works if you do cut out all of those deductions and all of that special interest stuff. I got a lot of money I'm willing to put on the table right here that says if the Donald is ever president, those special interest deductions don't go away so quick, but lowering the rates will.
But
Interesting.
a couple of things that I think are also really great. First of all, the repatriation of all the cash that's overseas from the
10%.
corporate. Fantastic. We need that money to be put to work here in the United States. The other thing is that Donald Trump is the first candidate that I've heard, and frankly the first politician I've heard, who understands small business and understands that the majority of small business owners pay at an individual income tax rate and not at a corporate rate. And he actually addressed that would be taken care of. Now, granted, devil's in the details, but that he understands that's an issue and that if you have a small business, you will be paying that 15% corporate rate. And I think that is huge for small business.
It was actually, I will not only agree with
huge.
you. Huge.
Huge.
It was the most creative part of what he's offered that nobody else has offered. I hope Democrats, by the way, will pick up on that as they begin to formulate their tax plans, because it was a smart idea.
It's great, and it's 28 million small businesses in this country. 22 million of them,
and they need
at least are going to be focused on this.
I agree.
Okay. So what would you grade this plan, A through F, Carol Ross?
I would say B+. There's some things I disagree with, but I think it was a very good plan.
Okay.
I'd
Rick?
say C+.
C+.
Yeah.
Why not a little higher?
Well,
than
you know,
77,
I'm a bigger fan, to be honest with you. If we're going to make changes, I'm for the flat tax with an understanding that it cannot be changed by adding special interest deductions or tax credits for a set period of time, like 25 years.
And I don't like the fact that not everybody has a stake. I don't care if you pay $5. I want you to have some stake so that you care.
I think either way, unlike Mitt Romney, you're not going to say that Donald Trump is the rich guy trying to help out his rich buddies and himself. He is the billionaire that comes off as a populist.
No,
it's
he's
a very
just trying
tricky
to
thing
hurt
to do.
a lot of poor immigrants.
Anyway, so what do you think about Donald Trump's tax plan? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. Up next, is Vice President Biden the Democrats' best chance to keep the White House? Is Biden even running? We think so, probably.
Yeah,
Stay tuned.
Some of us do.
I don't think any man or woman should run for president unless, number one, they know exactly why they would want to be president, and two, they can look at the folks out there and say, I promise you, you have my whole heart, my whole soul, my energy, and my passion to do this. And I'd be lying if I said that I knew I was there.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. That, of course, was the Vice President, Joe Biden, earlier this month appearing on Late Night with Stephen Colbert and sharing his thoughts on running for president. Now, right now, understandably, the Vice President may not be quite ready to decide if a run for the Oval Office is the right thing for him. But that's not stopping many Americans from hoping he just might change his mind. According to the latest NBC Wall Street Journal poll, 40% of Americans have a positive impression of Vice President Biden. And in head-to-head matchups with several GOP candidates, he seems to come out on top, even more so than current Democratic frontrunner Hillary Clinton. Now, according to the poll, the vice president beats former Florida Governor Jeb Bush 48% to 40%, Carly Fiorina 47% to 41%, Dr. Ben Carson 49% to 41%, and GOP frontrunner Donald Trump a whopping 56% to 35%. So, is Vice President Biden the Democrats' best shot at keeping the White House? Joe Concha.
Let's DVR our moment out in the newsroom during commercial, where we were talking about this, and we came to the conclusion that who do you most want to have a beer with? Right? Light beer, I'm gaining weight. And it's Joe Biden. And sometimes presidential elections come down to something, we analyze it to death and it comes down to something that simple.
Well,
who can I live with for the next 8 years, 4 years?
It's so much the truth. I always say, Carol, that running for the President of the United States has much more in common with running for a high school senior class than people ever want to admit.
I say this all the time and nobody listens. Nobody listens. Why don't they listen to us? It's the same thing. I mean, it doesn't matter if they promise that you're going to get a hot tub in the lunchroom or no homework. People want that popular kid. We said that that's why Romney wasn't a contender against Obama, and that's why people will like Joe Biden. Now, I will have to say, I wouldn't personally want to have a beer with him because of the whole creepy Uncle Joe kind of thing. But for a lot of people, I think that they might.
You do get a massage out of it, though. So it's nice.
It's okay. I'm good on the massage front. But I do have to say that the Trump-Biden debate is the debate that America deserves.
Absolutely. But I have to point this out, though. You know, it's funny how people can be very popular in these polls right up to the day they announce they're going to actually run. Look at Hillary's polls when she was Secretary of State. When she was out of politics, she was the most popular woman in America. Not so much today.
You know the difference, right?
Tell me.
You can't teach talent. That's what they say about people on TV, and that's what they say about politics. And Joe Biden, his performance on Colbert, you can't teach that. That was authentic. That was genuine. He is genuinely torn whether to run or not. And people at home saying, my God, I can really relate to what he's going
because it was real.
Exactly. And if Hillary tried the same thing, people would say, like, oh, this is all part of her trying to be warm.
Although I don't know that that's true. Think back to 2008. Hillary Clinton gets beaten in Iowa. She goes back up to New Hampshire. She has that moment where she starts crying.
No one will buy it this time around.
I mean, and Joe Biden is a sympathetic character. He's been through so much, and I think on a personal level, people relate to that. On Hillary's side, she's completely unrelatable, and people just don't like her. She doesn't have that likability factor. So I think it's very different for Hillary than it is for Vice President.
We talked about talent. There's also trust. And the numbers are upside down when it comes to Hillary, who's in the 30s in terms of trust, and Biden, who's near 60%.
So I got to switch gears on this a little bit because we really want to show everybody a bit of GOP presidential hopeful John Kasich, who's had to make the transition from lawmaker to governor. Now he sat down with our very own J.D. Hayworth and got pretty candid himself when asked what he had to do differently in his new role as a governor versus member of Congress.
When I first became governor, I still liked a few wisecracks and all that kind of stuff, but you learn over time it's just not worth it, because a bad wisecrack means you got 2 days to have to fix it, and you don't have the time to do that. So my mother said, not my mother, but my wife said one time when we were together, she said, you know, John, you're a dad, act like it. And so there's this period of growing up and maturing in those jobs.
Kasich's an interesting guy. Joe, I know that you're a longtime fan of the governor, and he has been your choice to be the next president. He does, in interviews like that, and I'm very anxious to see the rest of the interview, he shows a certain maturity that you would think would help him.
Yeah. Pragmatism isn't working in this election cycle, is what I've noticed. Fair. And if he were to debate Biden, we talk about Trump Biden, Kasich Biden would be the most civil campaign between those two, there'd be super PACs and everybody talking the dirty stuff, but those would be two people that you'd both root for.
So if you want to see more of that interview, and I highly recommend it, be sure to tune into Newsmax Prime tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern and see what JD, see his conversation. What is your pick for the 2016 nomination? Who's it going to be? Go to newsmaxpolls.com and let your voice be heard. And we're going to listen to those voices next when we read viewer comments. Stay right there.
Welcome back to Daily Wrap, where the debate never ends. So let's read some of your viewer comments. First up, we asked you who you think should replace John Boehner as Speaker of the House. Dan says Trey Gowdy for Speaker of the House. Ricky.
Interesting. Ray seems to agree with Dan. Ray says, we believe Trey Gowdy would be a good choice for the Speaker of the House.
Interesting. Jamie says, Steve Scalise is my pick. Kevin McCarthy is not conservative at all. He wants open borders and will follow in the establishment's footsteps. Let's stop the tape for a moment when we're actually live. But here's the thing. I watched McCarthy today. And I get the feeling on the Twitter and just the reaction in general is this is Boehner 2.0 from conservatives. We don't want him. It's more the same. And in his interviews, I don't see that passion and fire that conservatives are looking for.
He's still going to win.
He's going to win, but no one's going to be happy.
I do have to say, though, I mean, I understand what the commenter's saying in not being happy if that person's a conservative. But for open borders, I don't think so. Come on. Let's not stretch it. You're not going to be happy with him as Speaker of the House if you were unhappy with John Boehner. I think that's true.
Yeah.
What you may be happy with, and it remains to be seen, is the majority leader. That's going to be the ideological battle.
Interesting. Louis Gohmert doesn't work his way anywhere into this conversation.
Louis Gohmert has taken himself out of contention for all of them.
I don't think it matters who gets the post. I think people aren't going to be happy, and you're going to see the repercussions of that in the next election cycle.
I'm telling you, it's just like we saw in The Sopranos. I will continue to use this analogy. They want Johnny Sack dies. They want to take out the next guy, and they say, hey, you know what? You never know who's going to follow. And in this case, yeah, they got rid of Boehner. They got their trophy, and guess what? They get another Boehner, but somebody who's even more milquetoast. Is that a word?
And it's all going to end with a black screen, and we have no idea what's going on.
And a Democrat majority in the House. Let's move on.
Wow.
We also asked you if you thought Pope Francis was too political during his trip or just political enough. Dan says the Pope was selectively political. He did not talk about the conservative values that are part of our faith. He did finally mention gay marriage on his flight back to Rome, but he never mentioned the atrocities of Planned Parenthood. Actually, I believe he did.
He did mention it, but it wasn't a theme per se.
No, it was not a theme, but I think he did go there.
Yeah, I don't think he was as political as I had expected him to be. But I will tell you that even though I don't agree with a lot of his positions, I found him to be so endearing and really just the kind of leader that I really feel like we need more of it in this country.
Which is the point. So glad you said that. That is the point. Politically, I don't agree with everything the Pope thinks. I don't disagree with everything the Pope thinks. Who cares? I've said it every night. Who cares? The man is a spiritual leader. He makes us all feel good. I don't know anybody who doesn't like this man, and I'm glad he was here.
For 4 days, Washington, D.C. was actually civil.
Yeah.
And now
amazing. Maybe they'll take one little modicum
but by the
away.
way, I do want to compliment that commenter. That's a thinking person.
It is, isn't it? Okay, comment again. Maybe we'll read it. But there's thousands, so we don't know if we'll find you. Anyway, we wanted to know what you all thought about this new partnership between Iran, Russia, and Syria, the axis of evil. David says Russia should not be allowed a leadership role in the Middle East. It is yet another failure of the Obama administration and its policy lead from behind. They had to invent an oxymoron to explain the irrational behavior of the president, and it is accepted as a legitimate foreign policy. Russia should be contained before they swallow up any more free countries, but they will not be checked by this administration. I think we all agree.
Yeah, I think he might go a little bit far in his adjectives, but at heart, I agree.
Is it the Soviet Union 2.0? I mean, they're back.
No, it's really not.
Well, not quite, but I do think that it does kind of show the lack of leadership that we have here in America. It's just sort of a stark contrast, and I really hope that people take that to the polls and pick a leader who is going to be strong and bring us back to the forefront.
I don't know that I'd agree with you that it's a lack of leadership. Where I might agree with you is it's a lack of quality foreign policy with this leadership.
Quality leadership. How about that? Can we compromise on that? that.
No. We have some comments about Donald Trump as well. Who would have thought? Alice says Trump is the only one who truly wants America great again, and he has showed us more of his plans than any of the other candidates Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes was attacking through the whole interview. It would be nice to see a host just ask the questions and not show their bias.
Right, like me. Edward says, I don't think Donald Trump can do any more damage than the elite have done. So far, the GOP has been an extension of the Democratic Party. Next one to go should be, here's your next trophy, Rick, Mitch McConnell. I am thoroughly disgusted with them. I believe Fox News Channel is pushing Jeb Bush. If that's the case, I will not vote. Wow. Any reaction?
Yeah, they go a little bit too far. There are other people to make this country great again.
Okay, very good. Well, if you want to weigh in on any of the issues we talk about here in the show, be sure to send us your comments. As you can see, we read them on the air. It's an interactive thing. And as you may know, Dr. Carson has been sharply criticized for saying that a Muslim should never be president. Well, he's now released an urgent letter to the public on Newsmax.com. It's exclusive to us, damn it, and it's important you take the time to read it. You can find the letter in the breaking line at the top of the Newsmax website. Read Dr. Carson's urgent letter about why he is taking a stand and making a stand on this issue and why he will not be bullied by the PC police. You tell him. Up next, it's time for Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap. Well, hello there. How you doing? Happy time, people. Time for Yay or Nay. First up, Hillary Clinton setting off a tongue-in-cheek media frenzy. This after saying during a Facebook Q&A that she does not drink pumpkin spice lattes like Rick does. Pumpkin spice lattes, of course, as you all know, watching, is a caffeinated drink beloved and idolized by urbanites and millennials. On cue, Washington Post, Fox News, New York Daily News, Time, Reuters, all did stories on the funny exchange. None of those stories, however, noted that the Facebook user asking Clinton the question was a former staffer. Yes, Claire Khaleesi, otherwise known as the Mother of Dragons, is a public relations professional in Iowa who worked on the Clinton campaign in 2008 as a precinct captain. If you recall, the Clinton campaign admitted to using planted questions during the 2008 Democratic primary. Are planted questions part of Mrs. Clinton's attempts to be more fun and spontaneous? Unger.
Does that have to do with pumpkin spice lattes? Where did I lose all this?
She was asked a question by a former staffer that they knew was coming.
About pumpkin spice lattes?
Yes.
And she's so out of touch. She answered it wrong. People
I see.
love
Are you a pumpkin spice latte
She's just
kind of gal?
Just another reason why she's not of and for the people, because she doesn't like pumpkin spice.
Actually, to be honest, though, it actually wasn't Hillary Clinton who was planning the questions so much in 2008.
I'm sure it wasn't her.
It was John Edwards.
It was John Edwards?
Yeah, I actually was at different Edwards rallies.
You were?
And I'd see the same guy get up and ask the same question.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a quick question before we go back to yay or nay. The question to Trump in New Hampshire, like the president's a Muslim, we got to get rid of all the Muslims. Do you think he was a plant? Because I think he was.
They've actually uncovered, excuse me, that he was a plant.
Oh, he was?
Yes, yeah, that he actually worked for some Democratic organization.
Who was they? I didn't read about that very much.
I didn't know that either.
The media, the quiet media.
The quiet
media that gets glossed over.
I thought so.
By the way,
the non-mainstream
it was so
media.
contrived.
You referenced all of those newspapers in there. It ain't news until the Youngstown Vindicator prints it.
That's in Ohio. That's Rick's hometown paper that he worked as a kid when he delivered them and eventually typed for him and the whole thing. Yeah, when they used typewriters. Next, the face of CNN politics is Jake Tapper. That we can all agree on, I think. If you recall, though, he was the main moderator for the second GOP debate in California. So Tapper will also be moderating the first Democratic debate 2 weeks from today, right? Nuh-uh. Instead, say hello to Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon. Not exactly the first two people you think of when it comes to politics. There's Donnie. So joining Cooper and Lemon will be Dana Bash, who was present during the last Republican debate, and Juan Carlos Lopez of CNN Español, who wasn't there for the Republicans. My sources tell me CNN, who will host 6 debates total, is simply looking to spread the wealth around to other anchors and hosts, and no one on CNN will be part of more than 2 debates. But given this lineup of moderators, do you think the questions will even be half as confrontational as they were for the GOP candidates, Democrat Unveils?
Can I add the commercial? And if you want to know more about this subject, go read Joe Concha's latest piece in Mediaite.com, which he just rewrote here entirely.
That's true.
You know what? I'm going to correct one thing. I will agree with you on Don Lemon. Not the first name I think of when I'm thinking politics, but I think Anderson Cooper is a pretty good guy for a debate.
Oh, I agree, but I think John King or Wolf Blitzer may have been a little bit better served in this situation.
A little higher on the political total poll.
That's all
I
I'm
don't
saying.
care who moderates it. It was a mess of a debate. It was one of those, the first debate you kind of didn't want to end. This one, it was like, when is this going to end?
Well, I hope have had something being 3 hours long.
I hope that they have, whoever moderates it, have a better handle over the moderation. I think it was a hot mess.
I just wonder if you're going to see questions like, so, Bernie Sanders, Hillary Clinton said this about you, like they did in the GOP debate, and I just don't get that.
No.
And they have the Latino moderator
they
there.
have the pumpkin spice latte.
Yeah, they might. They
It'd be a lot tougher, you have to admit, because they have purposely not been saying bad things about each other on the Democratic
Oh, it would be
side.
very, yeah. They haven't attacked each other nearly as much. But they had the Latino moderator there. Why wasn't he there for the GOP one? When immigration is such a big stance, why is he suddenly showing up for this one?
Because he would have had to be there to ask 1.5 questions over 3 hours.
Yeah. It was longer than Titanic, which is a very hard thing to do. You know, the Rose Dawson, the Leo DiCaprio one. Anyway.
I do. Yes.
Thanks for coming. We
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it. We
me.
want you to come back. We've already traded some story ideas that we're going to talk about next time. It's gonna
Fantasy
be fun.
football, absolutely.
And fantasy football. Rick Unger, thank you as well. On behalf of Mr. Unger and the rest of the panel, thank you for joining us tonight. Steve Ballsberg Show. It's next.